small town of Poissy, outside of Paris, you can discover a plain white rectangular mass floating amidst a lush landscape. This is Le Corbusier's Villa Savoye of 1931. Architects commonly reference this building even to this day. We thought it would be interesting to talk about why this building earned its popularity.
When first seeing the building, you don't think much of it. It is not exactly a building seeking to impress its audience. Extremely plain, white concrete exterior makes up to the house of cubic form. The upper level of the building is a thin, square slab sitting atop a series of columns, giving the house an airy and weightless aesthetic.
The lower level is made up of a grid of these columns as well as a driveway that wraps beneath the house's upper level. A cylinder-like shape sits atop the roof, breaking free from the right angles of the square that it sits upon. The cylinder shape houses the spiral staircase that brings you from inside of the house to the gardens of the rooftop terrace. Some argue that the cylinder shape comes from Corbusier's interest in steamships and their streamlined design that stands for simplicity.
I see the simplistic and minimalist aesthetic of this building. I recall that Gothic revival was commonly used style around this era, involving dramatic design with extravagant detail. Examples of Gothic architecture include many cathedrals meant to have an extremely gradient feel. It seems that the style of architecture is completely absent from the Ville Savoye. In fact, that airy and plain aesthetic of the building seems to completely contradict the theme of Gothic architecture. Le Corbusier is coined for being one of the pioneers of modernist movement, which is why he is still referenced today. Through this architectural career, he advocated 5 points of architecture, a philosophy that can be applied to any style of architecture.
What are Le Corbusier's 5 points?
First, rising the house off the ground with a pillar to allow it to breathe. Second, include roof terrace to incorporate nature into the design. Third, a free-flowing relationship between room to allow interior freedom of space. Fourth, the smooth and plain facade to leave the room for formal experimentation. And finally, long and sleek windows, known as ribbon windows, so that light may be let in it without hindering a simplicity of the building aesthetic as a whole.
I see those 5 points present in the Villa Savoye. It is truly an example of Corbusier's philosophy of modern architecture come to life. Critics and Le Corbusier often reference the Villa Savoye as a machine for living. For example, the cylinder on the roof of the building may seem strange, but it serves the function of allowing the resident to go to the rooftop terrace. The rooftop terrace allows the resident to experience the nature from their home. Once inside the upper level of the house, it is made very clear what are the private spaces and what are public. The private spaces are somewhat closed off and small, while public spaces are wide open with freedom of movement from room to room to interior courtyard, furthering the resident's opportunity to experience nature from home. His use of columns on the first level, known as pilotis, not only makes the building light-weighted, but also allows human interaction.
The laid-back appearance of this design is credited to this ideology of the home as a machine for living, as you mentioned. Le Corbusier was not interested in flashy aesthetic feature. When you go into a factory and see the large industrial machine, it does not stand out as something of abstraction or beauty because that is not what it was designed for. It was designed to carry out a job. This is commonly explained as form following function. This is design ideology behind Ville Savoye that yields critically minimalist aesthetic.
The feature of this machine of a house that is most noted for is its lower level or pilotis. The grid of columns allow for a U-shaped driveway to pass through, designed specifically around the turn radius of an automobile, a fairly new invention at the time. The driveway allowed you to enter beneath the large volume of the upper level and turn into the garage at the core of the house to park. This core of the house at the first level was a curved mass composed of a wall of glass windows, serving as an entrance point to the house. To be able to pull right up to your house in such a fashion without leaving your car was a simplified life through design that Le Corbusier believed in.
So if this was a house built like a machine, why was there so much focus on having the house be located in lush forest with free-flowing plain to allow residents to easily experience its surrounding nature through rooftop gardens.
The reason for Le Corbusier's focus on environmental exposure has to do with the era for which it was built. With the growth of industrialization of the 1920s, there was a focus on implementing the philosophy of a simplified labor into the house. But Le Corbusier knew we were human, with more complex needs than that. It was a mechanized time that brought about a greater need for interaction with nature, which is what the Villa Savoye provided. That, paired with the rebellion from the Gothic Revival movement of architecture at the time, was Le Corbusier's way of taking a step back from the era of machinery and over-the-top architecture to a place of simplicity and nature, something that everyone was lacking. It was because of the birth of that new ideology that Le Corbusier is considered a pioneer of the modernist architecture movement.